Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, Lewis is here, so that's good. He wanted to. Okay, hold on a second. What is making that noise? That's good. Ah, sorry about that. Hi, Lewis.
Hi.
Okay, very good. So we're just beginning, and we're up to Daf Ayin Hay. Today's Daf is Daf Ayin Hay. I think from the most fascinating, fabulous Gemaras to remember. Today we're going to learn. I said that before, but every time there's something new and interesting. And today is no less than that. Just to recap, so just to finish up what we discussed yesterday. So on Daf Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, we're on the last line of Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. Just to review, we're discussing a woman that made a neder, right? A husband that was very strict. A guy said that I don't want, let's say, a wife that's a vegetarian. Okay. And I want you to, when they're dating, he says, you've got to make sure that I'm going to get engaged to you, but on condition that you don't have any vows that prohibit you from eating meat or drinking wine or dressing in colored clothing. Then he got married to her and he discovered she did have this vow on her. So what you would say is the end game. That means there was no marriage here. She violated the condition. But the Brisa says what? But let's say after she got married, she went to a rabbi and he undid the whole vow. And when we say a rabbi could undo a vow, it's from the very beginning, that as if she never had a vow. So therefore, they remain married, mikudashes. They remain married. You don't have to redo the whole kedushin over here. You don't have to make a new marriage. They could stay married. That's it. It's as if she did not violate the condition. So that's Brisa number one. As you can see, I put a number one over here. And then in the Brisa number two, it says, Vatanya, even if she went to a chacham, a rabbi, and undid the vow, still, Einu Mukadeshes, she's not married. She violated the condition. She went to a chacham and the guy undid the marriage. He undid the marriage. He undid the vow. Still, it's Einu Mukadeshes. Hi, Alan. We just began. And so we left off yesterday of trying to resolve the contradiction between the two brises on Daf Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. One brisa says that if you went to a chacham and he undid the vows on behalf of the lady, so she could remain married. And the other brisa says that if she went to a chacham and undid the vows, she cannot remain married. It's Einu Mukadeshes. So how do you resolve these two brises? So Rava gave a teretz that the Horab Meir, Horab Lazar, the brisa that says that she remains married goes according to Rab Meir. And Rab Meir is of the opinion that it's that a husband has no problem with his wife going to Bezdin and degrading herself in Bezdin, begging for them to find her a loophole in her neder. And therefore, if the husband, and therefore, even after she got engaged and married to this guy, and she had these vows in place, then she went to a chacham and was mat to her, the husband has no problem with that. He has no problem with that. And therefore, if she got the heter neder, that means she undid the vows, so she could remain married to this guy because she didn't violate any condition. But the brisa that says Einu Mukadeshes goes according to Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Lazar holds Ein Odom Roitze Tisbaza Ishte Bebezdin. A man does not want his wife to go to Bezdin and degrade herself. Again, to get heter neder, you have to discuss all your circumstances and what's going on in your head. And a person is ashamed if his wife would unload herself to the Bezdin. So even if she did that and she would get a heter neder, this would still be that the husband never wanted to marry such a lady, and therefore there's no kedushin, and it's as if they never got married. She violated conditions over here, and there's no marriage over here. Now the Gemara asks, what is the source? Where do you see the machlokes between Rabbi Lezer and Rab Meir? Rab Meir says doesn't mind if his wife goes to Bezdin and undoes a neder, and Rabbi Lezer says no, he does mind. What's the source of that? From a Mishnah. And that's basically a side point. Where's the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that a guy who divorces his wife Why does he divorce his wife? Because she makes neder, she makes a promise. So there's different opinions over here, but we're discussing Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion says that this guy who divorced his wife, okay, the Brisa says an overall statement. If you divorce your wife because she made a promise, a vow, you can never take her back. Because normally you have a right to take back your wife because, you could be machzeh grushase. A Yisrael can marry a grusha. So if you divorced your wife, you have the right to take her back. But if the reason why you divorced your wife is because she made a vow, you can't take her back. Now, why is it that you can't take her back just because you divorced her because she made a neder? So Rabbi Yehuda says that if she made this neder in front of everybody, that means the husband, once you make a neder in public, the husband there's no way out of that neder. There's no such a thing of heter neder. If you make a neder in the shul, in front of everybody, there's no heter neder anymore. So therefore, if she's such a, baseless woman, that an arrogant woman that, can make a neder in front of everybody, so no matter what the neder is, so it's a knas on her that the husband can never take her back once he divorces her. That's the point. Kol neder sheyoda by rabim lo yachzir, lo yoda by rabim, sheyoda by rabim, she made it in public, he can never take her back. But if it's a private neder, lo yoda by rabim, even if he divorces her, he can take her back. Let's see the reason. Ma tamad Rabbi Yehuda. What is the reason, Rabbi Yehuda? The ksiv, it says in the pasuk, Ayin Hey Amad Aleph, v'leihikum b'nei Yisrael ki nishbu lahem nisiya edo. The Gemara just brings a pasuk that if you make a neder in front of the shul, in front of people, you can't go back and undo that vow. And the Jewish people made a treaty, a false treaty. They were fooled into making a treaty with the Givonim. Really, these people were from the 7 nations. They fooled the Jewish people, pretending they're from somewhere else. And therefore, the Jewish people made a shvua in front of, all of Klal Yisrael, basically, that they're never going to attack them and kill them like they were going to do with the 7 nations. That's what the pasuk says in Yeshua. So because they made this neder barabim, that's why they couldn't violate it. The kama rabim, what makes a neder in public, a public neder? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak called mashloisha, even with just 3 people there. Because you see in the Chumash that the word Yama means Shnaim. When the Torah says Rabim, it means Shloisha. You see that by Zav and Zava, that the word Rabim means Shloisha. So according to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, even a person who takes a neder in front of 3 people, there's no heter nedarim anymore. Only a private neder you can do heter neder, but not a public neder. Rabbi Yitzchak is a little bit more strict. Or lighter, lenient. Asara, you have to have 10 people there hearing you make the neder. That's a public neder. Eidik Sibo, because the Torah says over here, the Navi says the Jewish people did not attack the Givonim because they swore to them. The CA Ha'eda, the president of Ha'eda, and the word Ha'eda means 10 people. Ha'eda, we know from the Chumash, means 10. So the bottom line is, but the bottom point over here is that Yehuda says that if this woman was so brass and made this neder in public, then the husband who divorces her will have not the right to take her back. That's the point. No, but comes along Rab Meir, and Rab Meir has a new opinion. He says there's another reason why, and you have to speak this out. There's another reason why if you divorce a woman because of a neder, we don't want the man to take her back. And the reason is because suppose a man divorces his wife and he says, the only reason why I'm divorcing her is because she made a neder. Let's say she made a neder. She's not going to a certain restaurant. Okay. She goes ahead and marries somebody else. And then all of a sudden, after he gets married to somebody else, he sees her in the restaurant. Then he asks her, what are you doing here? Don't you have a neder? And she says, I was mater the neder. So he will say, wait a second, if I had known that you could be mater neder, I would never have given you the divorce. And of course, this will, make the get that he gave her questionable, and could be that people will say, she's living in sin with the second guy. So therefore, to solve that problem, they said that any neder, if you're giving a divorce because your wife made a neder, if it's a type of neder that she could be mater neder on, you know you can never take her back because really we can say the guy would have no problem. We want him to make sure that when he gives that divorce, he knows what he's doing exactly. And he knows for a fact that he wouldn't have had a problem with his wife going to the Beis Din and getting a heter. So we're very strict on him and saying that know that there's a hinyan of heter neder, and perhaps maybe when your wife is going to marry your wife is going to marry somebody else, she's going to be mater neder. So no, you can't take her back. So therefore, that's what he says. Rab Meir Oimer kol neder shetzorach akiros chachamim lo yachzer. You can't take it back. If it's a neder that can be shetzorach akiros chachamim, that the chacham could investigate to give a heter, that if you're divorcing her because of that, lo yachzer, you can never take her back. Rabbi Elazar says the opposite. Lo asru tzorach al pnei shein tzorach. Rabbi Elazar says that a man would never want his wife to go be mater neder. So he has no problem with that. The guy's never going to say that, if I would have known that you could go be mater neder, I would have wanted to give you a divorce. He would have never wanted her to go to Beis Din. No man wants his wife to go to Beis Din, according to Rabbi Elazar. Why did they aser neder? Because if it's a type of neder that doesn't need chakiros chachamim, in other words, it's a type of neder that he himself could have nullified the neder, he could always say, I never knew the inyan of hefer neder that I could have made for that neder. Let's say she made a neder, she's not going to eat the grapes. So if it's a type of neder then it could lead to kilkel, because if he finds her married to somebody else eating grapes, he could have said, if I would have known that I could be made for that neder on grapes, I would have never released you. So because of that type of neder, they asered even a tzorach, even a neder, that if you divorced her because with a type of neder that you could not be made for, it's only a type of neder that you could only a chacham can untie. It's only because of a type of neder she'ein a tzorach that would not need a chacham. Where there it could lead to kilkel. So this is the point. But my kami palgi, what is the argument? This is the basic argument you have to figure out. Rab Meir saw a man has no problem with his wife going to Beis Din and seeking a heter neder, and therefore, if she does do that, which is the first brisa, if she does do that, then he can remain married to her. A man does not want his wife to become degraded in Beis Din, and therefore, he would never want her to go to heter neder. So even if he married her, according to Rabbi Elazar, a guy marries his wife with no vows, and he finds out she has a vow, and she goes to Beis Din to get a absolvement of that vow, it's still no good. It's still not a good marriage, because he never wants his wife to go to Beis Din, and he wouldn't want to marry her. And then she goes to Beis Din and gets a heter neder. So that's how you resolve the two questionable brises that seem to contradict each other. Rava Amar, new teretz. Rava says, again, let's go back to the question. One brisa says, a guy married his wife, and she's supposed to have a neder on her. After they get married, she went to a chacham and undid the neder. So the first brisa says she's mekadeshes, because now she didn't violate any condition. She doesn't have a neder anymore. And one brisa says ain't mekadeshes. No, she violated the condition. Even if she get a heter neder, it's still not a good marriage, not mekadeshes. So Rava says it's very simple. Rava hacha beisha chashuva askinim. The amalei loynichali di tasa b'krayvesel. Brisa number 2 that says that even if she got a heter neder, the husband would not want this wife anyway. Why? The chayra, she has no more neder anymore. But still, he can say like this: I see that this is a woman. Listen to this. This is a woman that makes neders. So okay, right now this time she got a heter neder. But if she's going to make another neder and she's not going to get a heter neder, I'm going to want to give her a divorce. And if I'm going to give her a divorce, I'm going to have a problem, because she comes from a royal family. You hear? This is today's story. She comes from a royal family. And if I give her a divorce, I will never get another chance to marry a relative within that royal family, because, I can't marry her brother or her son or something like that. I can't get into that royal family. So therefore, I'd rather say that my original marriage to this lady is not effective, and therefore I could get another chance to marry into that family. That's what the second brisa is talking about, a regular isha chashuva from a royal family. But the first brisa that says mukudeshes, if she gets the het the nether, it's mukudeshes, it's talking about a non-royal family. And a non-royal family, so even if she makes another nether and he divorces her, he never going to marry into that family anyway. So therefore, he has no problem if she gets the het or nether, so he can stay married to her, and it's still a good kedusha. So Gemara asks another question, and here's where the Gemara comes into interesting insights. If you're going to say so, Sefer Diktani, Avalhu Shahalach Eitzel Chacham. A man goes, if she made, let's say she made a condition. There's a Sefer of the Brisa that says, the end of the Brisa says, that she made a condition, on the condition that you can't, I'm not marrying you if you're a vegetarian, right? He made a condition. And then she finds out, after they get married, that he has a vow on himself that he can't eat meat. So the marriage should be off, because she made a specific condition that if he has this vow, she doesn't want to get married or engaged to him. But what happens? But he, Shahalach, Eitzel, the man went to the Chacham Yitirah. He got an absolvement from the Chacham, or a doctor that healed him if it was a conditional marriage that he's not handicapped. But the point is, if he absolved himself from that neder, mukudeshes. So she's become mukudeshes. But why? Listening, let it say, Eina Mikdeshes. Let it say that she's not mukudeshes. Why? Because she could say like same thing. And since the whole Bryce is talking about a very royal family, so the opposite case must be true, that he comes from a royal family. And therefore, the Amra, she's going to say, I don't want to become prohibited on his relatives. Why? Because if, let's say he got a het neder, okay, so she'll remain married to him. Then he makes another neder, and he will not get a het neder, so she's going to demand a divorce. She can't live with a guy that has these crazy vows. And he's going to give her a divorce. She'll never get another chance to marry into this royal family. So why don't we say that the same way that you say by when she has that when she comes from a royal family? Why don't you say the opposite? When he comes from the royal family, she doesn't want to stay with a person like that. She doesn't want to stay with a oisvarf like that because it's going to block her chances from marrying into a royal family. So the Gemara says this concept, and the Gemara says this concept all over many times in Shas, that a woman wants to remain married more than a man, and to the same point, to the extreme, that even if her husband is just a guy who has the lowest job, he washes cars, or he's a guy that's very short and looks funny, she has no problem with that. So that's what he says. She's never going to want to get divorced from a guy like that. She, a woman, any type of man is good for her. Kinder Resh Lakish, like Resh Lakish says. The Amar Resh Lakish says, for a woman, it's tav lemesav. She'd rather be tamdu, with two bodies. In other words, married, melamesav armale, to be alone. A woman has a much tougher time being alone, and she'd rather be married no matter what than to stay alone. Abaya says, the shumana gavra, even if her husband is the size of an ant. Kusaya becharasa rabila, she puts her chair amongst the nobles. She's no problem, putting her chairs, by the mizrach wall in the shul, as long as she's married. She doesn't feel insecure. Rapapa says another example. The nafso gavra, if she has a husband that combs wool, that's like a very menial job. Tikre b'seife bava, she calls to him to sit on the porch in front of everybody. She pulls up a chair, but takes if he can sit down. In other words, she doesn't mind showing off that she has a husband, even though he has a menial job. They don't mind sitting together on their front yard, in front of everybody. Ravashi said the kalsa gavra, even if he comes from a degraded family, a man who has, his yichus is not so good. His loy boya talpche lechikidre. She doesn't even request lentils for her soup. In other words, she's happy whatever living he brings home, however he acts in the house, as long as she's married to this guy. So this tells you some insight in a woman that she wants to stay married more so than a man. So therefore, the Gemara concludes, but if you see a woman that has a real, low life of a husband, so then you got to assume something is wrong with her. So Tana, we learned in the Brisa, Vakula, all these cases, if they have a very low class husband and they're showing such affection to that husband, Mizanes v'toilis b'val ehem. They all bezana. In other words, the women have adulterous relationship, and then they become pregnant, and they ask you, how do you become pregnant? And he says, I have this husband. So that's why they show affection to their low-life husband, but really it's just an excuse for them to commit adultery with other people. That's what the Gemara says. Okay, let's go further into another interesting Gemara. The Gemara says that a man makes a condition with a woman that you don't have any handicaps. And we find out after they got married, there is a handicap. She had a handicap. She hid it well. The marriage is over, right? And what determines a handicap? So the Mishnah says that any handicap that would invalidate a Kohen to serve in the Beis HaMikdash invalidates a woman. That's the handicap that would invalidate a woman and end the marriage if he placed the condition that she does not have any handicap. So Tana, we learned in the Brisa. Like for example, if a Kohen doesn't have a hand, so he can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So if a man marries a woman and he stipulated before the marriage that I'm marrying you on condition you have no handicap, then he gets after the marriage, he finds out she doesn't have a hand, the marriage is nullified. There's no get needed for such a marriage. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, the Brisa, they added on to the Mishnah other handicaps, that if a woman has this handicap, it automatically ends the marriage without any get needed. Provided, of course, he stated a condition that he's only marrying her without any handicap. So the Gemara says, what are the things that invalidate a marriage? Zaya, if she's the type of woman that sweats a lot, because if she sweats a lot, she smells. Veshuba, she has a bad odor. Veshuma, she has a mole. V'reach hapeh, or she has bad breath. So if he finds out after the marriage that this is her problem, and he discovers a mole, or she sweats a lot and she has a foul odor, so then the marriage is over. So the Gemara says, if a Kohen has, you're trying to say that these women are addition, but it's from your applying, the Bryce is implying that these women, these handicaps, would not invalidate a Kohen who has these same handicaps. And therefore he could serve in the Beis HaMikdash if he has bad breath, if he has a mole, if he sweats a lot. But that's not true. But now we learned in the Mishnah, Hazokein, an old animal, V'achoil, a sick animal, V'hamzuram, a sweaty animal, is possible for an animal of a carbon. Utnan, we learned in the Mishnah, woman Eli, these blemishes that we meant that invalidate an animal, it invalidates a human being, invalidates a coin. Bein b'kvuin, whether it's unhealable, bein ovrim, or whether it heals, psulim ba'adam, it would invalidate a coin. So we see that if a coin has a foul odor, he also can't do service in the Beis HaMikdash. And from the Brisa seems to imply that it's uniquely by a woman. If she has these blemishes, it ends the marriage. Not by a kohen. A kohen could serve in the Beis HaMikdash with a foul odor. So how do you resolve that Brisa with this? It's not difficult. It means that if she has the foul odor is not always there, so by a kohen serving in the temple, so then it depends. If the foul odor dissipates, so during the time that he doesn't have the foul odor, he could serve in the Beis HaMikdash. But if it's a foul odor that's always there, then even a Kohen wouldn't be able to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. That's why it says if a Kohen has the foul odor that never disappears, so then he can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. But if it's a foul odor that sometimes disappears, he could serve in the Beis HaMikdash when he does not have the foul odor. But by a woman, even if it's a foul odor that's not always there, but still, you never know when it's going to start up again. So this is a type of handicap that the husband could say, I didn't sign up for something like this, and therefore it would invalidate the marriage. And the marriage can be over without a get. Rav Ashi says another teretz. Zayam zoim karamis. You ask a question from sweat to body odor. Hosan gabe kahanim. Even a kohen that has a body odor, right? Efshar or a bad breath, even if it doesn't dissipate, it's always there. During the service of the Beis Hamikdash, he could put on cologne. Efshar le'abra b'kiyur dechamra. He could put on underarm deodorant or whatever it is, that light wine that took away the foul odor temporarily. And if she has bad breath, you could take it away. You could put a piece of pepper in his mouth and conserve in the Beis Hamikdash. Aval gabe isha, but a woman loy efshar. It's impossible because a woman that has that, yes, she could walk around with gum and wear perfume, but if she has a natural foul odor, she's always around the husband, and it's impossible for her to always be with a pepper in her mouth or always perfume or something like that. So therefore, it's something that's considered a handicap, and the man can invalidate the marriage based on that blemish that he just found out. The Mishnah, we learned in the Brisa that Shuma, that if she has a mole, that means that can invalidate the marriage as well. If he discovers a mole. So the Gemara says, "Hey Chadami, what is the case that by a woman, if you find a mole, it would invalidate the woman, but it wouldn't invalidate a Kohen, let's say. Eid is if it's a type of mole that has a hair in it, so it's puzzle by both a Kohen and by her. Because a kohen that has this, it's not really a physical handicap, but it's repulsive. It looks so repulsive. It's so big, and it has hair on it, so it's repulsive. So by kohen also would invalidate a kohen to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. Either less, the law is posei if it doesn't have hair in it. So it depends. If it's a big mole, whether by a woman, whether by a kohen, it wouldn't be invalidated. If it's a small mole, it wouldn't possibly even by a woman. A woman who has a small mole, how could she be repulsed by her husband? It's too small. So why should that invalidate the marriage? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Shuma sheyespa say or if a mole has hair in it, harei mum. That's considered a handicap, a puzzle to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. Ein ba say if it has no hair. Gidol if it's big, harei zemum. That's a handicap. Kitan if it's small, ein zemum. The ezehi gidol, what defines a big? If it's the size of a coin called the Isser of Italy, that's called a big mole. If it's bigger than that size, what's the bottom line? The question is, how is it possible to have a case of a woman having a mole that would not be invalid for a kohen having the similar mole to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and it would invalidate the woman. It would say that's a handicap by a woman that the marriage is over. Answers the Gemara, it's right on her forehead, so he always looks at it. So she always sees it, even if it's a small mole, it would invalidate a woman, but not invalidate a kohen. So the Gemara says, Pedachta, if it's on her forehead, he must have seen it before he got married, and he came to terms with it. So what's the point? How could that invalidate? Why could the marriage end? He married her, he saw the mole on her head. She looked like an Indian. The mole was under her head covering. Sometimes she seen it, and sometimes she didn't see it. He didn't see it. So he could always say, I never knew she had a mole by her forehead. And therefore, if he discovers that after they got married, he can invalidate the marriage, claiming that that's a handicap. By a kohen, since it's small, it's not considered a handicap. The Gemara continues. Rab Chizda said, I heard this following teaching from a great person. And who is that? Rab Shalom. If a dog bit her, and in the place, the wound healed, but there's a big scar, that is a handicap that invalidates a woman. Rab Chizda said, if a man discovers from his wife, apparently he never spoke to his wife beforehand. After they get married, he finds out she has a man's voice. She has a very thick voice. That's considered a handicap. What makes somebody a woman sweet is she looks good and she has a sweet voice, a feminine voice. If she has a thick voice, a man's voice, that can be a handicap that invalidates a woman. A fascinating thing. Another thing that invalidates a woman, Reb Nosson from Bira said, Bein dade isha tefach. If you discover between the two breasts of a woman that there's a tefach, let's say 6 inches between them, so that's something, we don't know what he said. So Rav Acha thought that means tefach, if you find that it's separated a tefach, a 6 inches, l'mal yusa, that's an advantage for her. Amalei Rav Ashi, just the opposite. Rav Ashi explained, Gabi mumin Tanya. That is considered a mum, a blemish. It's the breasts are too far apart from each other. Now, I think it's in all of Shas, the most fascinating Gemara. The Kama. The question is, what's a perfect 10 on a woman to be considered a perfect 10? If you're trying to determine a beautiful woman, what's the distance between the two breasts of a woman? What should it be? Amar Abai says shalosh etzba'is. The width of 3 fingers, that is ultimate beauty. Tanya, we learned in a brayza. Reb Nosson says, "Kol isha shedadeh gasim mishal. If you find a woman that has big breasts, it's so big, bigger than a normal breast, harei zemum, that's mum. That's a blemish. V'kama, how big? How big is bigger than normal? Amar Amiyasha bar Breder Rabbi Shua Levi Mishmei Rabbi Shua Levi tefach. It has to be. It's bigger by a tefach, 6 inches bigger, probably circumference-wise, bigger than a normal breast." So the Gemara says, and lengthwise also. So the Gemara says, is it possible for a human to have such a breast? And says, yes. The Omer Rabba Babachona said, Ani re'isi Arabiya, I saw an Arab, Achas, that she has such large breasts, Shafila Adadel Acharel, she put the breast, threw it over her shoulder, and she nursed her child, carrying the child on her shoulder, so she had such a large breast. How he saw such a thing, probably, he wasn't staring at it, but if God showed him that, it's because it has to be taught in the Talmud. Very, very special Gemara. The Gemara just says aside Haggadah. Later on, when Mashiach comes, the Jews will be brought by the Goyim to Eretz Yisrael. Ish, man for man. And people who are in Gullus, like over here in the 5 towns, they will be brought by the Goyim. They'll pay for our flights to Israel. He explained this pasuk, whether someone who was born in Israel and finds himself, let's say, in the 5 towns, or somebody who's not born there, he's not an Israeli, but he's praying every day to see it. In the future, they're going to bring us both back to Israel, to our hometown, to our home country. That's what's going to happen. And they're going to bring us, they're going to pay for our moving costs. Amar Abaya said, the Chad Minayu Odav Ketrei Minam. The Ketrei Minam. One of them, if you take somebody who learns Torah in Eretz Yisrael, he's better than 2 people learning over here. Because they learned, they had the Avira, the Eretz Yisrael Machkin. People who learn in Israel, it makes you somehow smarter. That's what Abaya said. But Rava countered. Rava said, Echad Minan, if somebody from Chutz La'aretz, Kisalik Lahasam, goes to Israel to learn, so you have the street smarts. People who live outside of Israel are sharper people, and they have better brains. So if you bring them to Israel, they become super smart. Odav Ketrei Mineo, then they're better than 2 who are natural born citizens, because now they're brought to Israel, they have their natural brains, and the air of Israel makes you smart. Combine that, it's a double punch. The Rabbi Yirmiyah moved to Israel. When he lived here, when he lived in Bavel, he had no idea how to explain what the Rabbanim was saying. But when he moved there, he was already calling the Babylonians tipshim. He was so smarter than the regular Babylonians, something that Israeli rabbis would never call the Babylonians dunces, but he felt he was super smart, smarter than the Israeli rabbis, and confident enough to call his former comrades the Babylonians who are dunces or tipshin. New Mishnah. Mishnah says, a man sees that a wife has mumen, and she's in her father's house. Now he discovered that he's not ready to go to marriage. He discovered she had a handicap, made a condition that you're not going to have a handicap. And then he takes one look at her while before the marriage, she's still in her father's house. So then we could say the marriage is off and he doesn't have to give ksuba. But the onus is on the father. If the father wants to collect ksuba, he has to prove that this handicap happened after he got engaged to her. And therefore, that's when these blemishes happen. And therefore, it's like his field got flooded. It's his tough noogies, because she didn't fool him. It happened after she got engaged to him. So the onus is on the father. Because why? We see in the beginning of the Mishnah holds that that the most important thing is cheskas mammon. We assume that, you don't want to take money out of somebody unless you're sure. So the cheskas mammon that the husband has, stays by him. We keep the money by him unless it can be proven that he owns kesuba. That's what the beginning of the Mishnah says. Then the Mishnah goes on and says, let's say he got married to her, and then after a week, he discovered she has a mum. So now he wants to divorce her, right? But he doesn't know when she got this mum. Perhaps she got this handicap after she got engaged to him. So in order for him to not pay the ksuba, the onus is on the husband to prove that she had these handicaps before he got engaged to her, and she fooled him. Once he proves that she fooled him, he doesn't have to pay ksuba. But if he can't bring proof, then he has to pay the ksuba. Now, this implies something the opposite. This implies that what's more important over here, we say cheskas gufa. That means that she was born healthy, and that if she got a handicap, it must have came later in life. And later in life means after she got married to him. So after she got engaged to him. So we see right away that there is a contradiction between the beginning of the Mishnah, which seems to imply when you have a cheskas guf and a cheskas mammon, the beginning of the Mishnah says cheskas mammon is powerful, and the end of the Mishnah says when you have a cheskas guf and a cheskas mammon, cheskas guf is more powerful. So the Gemara is going to deal with that right away. The Chacham says, "B'mei devar mamum, b'mum shebaseiser." We go on my base. That's simple. When do we have this argument that a husband wants to break a marriage? Only if it's a blemish that he could not have known before. But if it's a woman, if she's walking without a foot and he probably seen it before, he can't say, "Oh, I don't want to marry her. I don't want to pay ksuba," because he saw it and he came to terms with it. And let's say there's a bathhouse in the city. So even if she has a private blemish, he can't say, I didn't want to marry her. Why? He could have known about it by investigating through his relatives that live in the city and go to the same bathhouse to find out if she has any blemishes. And the fact is that he married her anyway. It's because it's a proof that he came to terms that even if she does have a blemish, he accepts it. Therefore, he can't claim later, "Oh, I don't want her anymore. She has this blemish." He must have known about it beforehand. So the Gemara just asked this question, and then we'll stop. Tama de Meisa Avraya. It's the ratio of the Mishnah says that the father brought proof that she had the blemish before. Holoi Meisa Avraya. If the father did not bring a proof that she got the blemish later on after she got engaged, Habal Mehem, the husband is believed, and the husband does not have to pay ksuba because cheskas mammon is more important. Money. Who does the beginning of the Mishnah go according to Rabbi Yeshua? Goes according to Rabbi Yeshua. The Alma Loime Pia Anechayim. We don't. That Rabbi Yeshua is what we said in the beginning of the Masechta. Rabbi Yeshua always says that cheskas mammon is more important than cheskas aguf, and therefore the husband does not have to pay ksuba. The onus to bring proof that he should pay ksuba is on the father. Aim a sefer. Take a look at the sefer of the Mishnah. That the husband, the onus to bring proof is the proof is on the husband. Time of the Maisa Baal Raya, Holoi Maisa Baal Raya, Ha'av Mehemen. Asin la Rabbi Gamliel, the Memenis. So the end of the Mishnah seems to go according to Rabbi Gamliel that since the onus is on the husband, it's because the cheskas haguf is much more stronger. And therefore, we assume that the blemish must have came later on in life. She was born healthy, and the blemish must have came after she got engaged to him, and therefore he loses out. And if he doesn't want to pay ksuba, he has to prove it. So what is it? The beginning of the Mishnah seems you go according to Rabbi Yeshua, who says cheskas mammon is more important. The end of the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Gamliel, who says cheskas haguf is more important. For the Gemara, we'll go just one teretz. Rabbi Lazar says, Tavra, you break apart the Mishnah. Misha shanazu, lo shanazu. You're right. The first part of the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yeshua. Cheskas mammon is most important. It doesn't matter if this debate happened when she's engaged, even after she's married. Cheskas mammon is all important, and this according to the Sefer of the Mishnah. You're right, goes according to Rabbi Gamliel. The two authors of this Mishnah, and Rabbi Gamliel holds that the cheskas guf is more important. So this is where we'll stop. We'll discuss more about the Mishnah tomorrow.